Well, let's get going then. We've got a ton to cover. So want to welcome everybody on the call, on the webinar for today. We've got a ton of ground to cover, and you got three folks on this call who've now all known each other for a couple of years, as we've all worked together on a journey to bring technology from SmartVid, from Autodesk, and bring it into play at Barton Malow, all with the goal of reducing project delivery risk. So hopefully at the end of this webinar, everybody will understand what these different technologies are, what SmartVid is, how Autodesk Construction Cloud work. And you'll hear from Ted Jennings here from Barton Malow about that journey, the journey of using these technologies and figuring out how they can be applied together at Barton Malow to help reduce risk. Now, given what's going on in the world out there with COVID-19, that journey is, run right into that. And so we'll also talk about how these technologies are being used to help deal with COVID-19. So during this webinar, we'll talk about some specific resources that are out there that SmartVid has, that Autodesk has, and that are out there in the industry in general to help with COVID-19 overall. Whereas when we started, the whole concept of this webinar was really about the journey of the technology, the expansion, the technology adoption, and the value. Now with COVID-19 out there, no conversation can really be had without talking about COVID-19 itself. And there's ways that these technologies actually help mitigate the impact of COVID-19. So that's hopefully what we get out of you guys get out of the webinar. Well, in just a second, I'll be introducing the other two panelists here. You'll hear a little bit about SmartVid, a little bit about Autodesk, and then a lot about Barton Malow and the journey that we've all taken on together over the last couple of years. Like I said, we've known each other. We've all been working together on this journey. We're not marketing folks, so you're going to hear, right from the three of us how this has all gone with some real examples. And we'll end with Q&A at the end. So first of all, webinars. If you've been on a webinar before, you're muted. But it doesn't mean we don't want you to participate. We'll be taking your questions during this webinar. You can use chat. It should look something like what you see to the right. That's kind of the screenshot that GoToWebinar has. It looks like it's from 10 years ago. But I think that's what the chat looks like for most folks. Put the chat in there. We have someone standing by actually to answer questions. If we don't get to your question during the chat, we've got a Q&A section at the end, and we'll be able to should be able to get to it then. If not, then we'll follow up with an email. So don't be shy, interact, ask questions. Also, you should know, actually one of the most common questions, and you should know, is that the webinar is being recorded. So all this is being recorded for posterity. So if Steve or Ted or I say something dumb, we'll never be able to live it down, unfortunately. But you guys know that you'll then be able to hopefully share the good parts also. So this is automatically going to be sent to all the registrants, whether you're on the webinar listening live right now or if you tune in later. So let's get into who you got on the line here for the next 45 minutes or so. I'm Josh. I'm the CEO and founder of SmartVid. I've been doing AEC construction software for over 15 years. You may have heard of Vela Systems. It's a long time ago now, but it's now called BIM 360 Field, the Autodesk product. So I've been working in the field since 2005, bringing technology to the construction industry. And based up in Boston, another fact here, I've done a ton of webinars over my career, so I like to try and break them up a little bit with some stuff that's not right on topic, like what are some fun facts about each of the speakers. So we'll be asking Ted and Steve for some fun facts as well. Some of my facts are in terms of job sites. I've been on Cowboy Stadium down in Arlington, Texas. The Liberty Hotel here in Boston were amazing jobs to be a part of walking and have our software used on. Another fact about me, I continue to try and organize cross-industry groups. We've organized the Predictive Analytics Strategic Council here at SmartVid. It's kind of a mouthful, but it's basically companies getting together and sharing data to figure out how to predict risk on job sites and sharing the results. Barton Malow is a member of that. Thanks for that, Barton Malow. And then my last little fun fact here is probably not all that not all that novel, but I'm here in the quarantine with my 2 sons and wife in Boston, and our dog, and our eyeballs are bleeding pretty much from all the Netflix we're watching. So hopefully everybody out there is finding a way to stay sane through the quarantine as we go, and you're also taking advantage of all the content we have out there. So I'm going to talk a little bit about SmartVid really quick, just a couple slides, and then introduce Steve, and he'll talk a little bit about Autodesk, a couple slides, and then we'll get right into the meat of this with Ted and Barton Malow and the journey. So what is SmartVid? Well, our mission is to reduce risk in the AEC industry, our construction industry overall, by using artificial intelligence to try and improve safety, which we're going to talk a lot about today, quality, and productivity. So bringing AI to construction. Back in 2005, when I was a part of Vela Systems, we brought mobility in the cloud to construction. Now, 10 years later, we're bringing artificial intelligence to construction. So we're a software company. It's all about using the data you have and applying AI to that. 100% on construction. We've tuned our AI, which we've nicknamed Vinny. So Amazon has Alexa. We've got Vinny. He's named after a superintendent from Northern Jersey. We've trained on construction data. And so our artificial intelligence is actually better than Google because it's trained on construction data. We've pre-built integrations with construction technology vendors to make it easy to deploy. So Autodesk BIM 360, the Autodesk Construction Cloud, is plugged right into SmartVid. We'll talk about that more detail today. We're Boston-based, offices around the world, and then you can see some of our customers down there below, large contractors and also some large trades like Lithgow and others. So we're thrilled to have Barton Malow as a customer and thrilled to be on this journey with them over the last few years. Also on the journey with Barton Malow is Autodesk. So in today's webinar, we're going to hear from Steve and the Autodesk crew about how Barton Malow has been expanding their use of Autodesk software as well. So let me introduce Steve to talk a little bit about his background.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So Steve has said here, I'm a construction subject matter expert for Autodesk working in our pre-sales. Been in the construction industry for about 15 years prior to coming to Autodesk about 8 years ago. I've been working very closely with Barton Malow over the last couple of years. Though I'm Denver, Colorado based, I am another New Englander, as Josh is. And most of my construction experience came from the heavy construction side. So I did have the pleasure of working on the I-195 relocation project in Rhode Island, the Border Patrol Station up in Swanton, Vermont, a couple of projects in the Newport Naval Academy. So Newport in the summertime is a pretty amazing spot to be in Rhode Island. And I was part of the Big Dig, but more of the Parks and Reclamation project after they pulled the overpass down, so not responsible for the crossed overrun. A couple of fun facts. I broke my knee recently, but did not need surgery while I was chasing my buddy's 5-year-old nephew. Not the way to Jerry Hill. And even though I grew up in Rhode Island and I grew up on the ocean on Narragansett Bay, I do not like to fish. I will only fish at the grocery store.
Yeah, is that why? So the skiing injury and the not fishing, is that why they kicked you out of New England, or
that's yeah, that's exactly why. Exactly why.
Awesome, Steve. Maybe talk a little bit about Autodesk. We'll just have a few slides here, and then we'll get to Ted.
Yeah. So as Autodesk, design data and BIM is really in our DNA. Enabling our project data or your project data to flow seamlessly across the life cycle of a project and to make it available for teams in the right place at the right time is a logical step. And it's that connected data that opens up the potential for that industrialized construction that we're all trying to move towards, that adoption of manufacturing principles that drive true transformation in our industry that is needed. The solution that we have is the Autodesk Construction Cloud that we released in AU of last year, and it really helps companies move that information through the digitize, integrate, and optimization stages as part of that cloud. And there are really 3 pillars to the Autodesk Construction Cloud. The advanced technology to help equip builders with powerful and easy-to-use tools for every workflow in your construction process. Our Builders Network, that's a real-time crowdsourced network that connects owners and builders to the right trade and technology partners to equip each job for the best project outcomes. And at its core is that predictive insights. And this is where I get the most excited about things. It's that construction IQ and trade tap from Building Connected, the machine learning algorithms that build using a decade's worth of data and experience, providing the end user better user data. Just like SmartVid's doing this construction AI and better than Google because it's based upon that construction information. And there are four main products in our construction cloud, four main components and workflows and capabilities. Assemble, being able to condition, design review, takeoffs, and estimation of models. Building Connected, 48.5 million bid invitations sent out is something that is incredible to me when I see that. BIM 360, being that common data environment for everybody to have a one-stop shop for all their information. And then PlanGrid, our powerful construction field software for people to have access to the documentation whenever they need it.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. And thanks for handling it as I spazzed there and went 3 slides ahead and came back.
Not a problem.
Handled that well. So hey, we now get to the main attraction here. It's my pleasure to introduce Ted Jennings from Barton Malow. It's been great to work. Steve and I were talking here. Both of us have been working with Ted for years now. It's been great to work with you, Ted, as a true partner in bringing tech to our industry. We really appreciate you being on this webinar and sharing some of the journey. Let's start with you introducing yourself here, and then we'll get into the heart of what we've been doing together.
Great, thanks, Josh. Thanks for the introduction. So Ted Jennings with Barton Malow. I'm a senior VDC engineer based out of Southfield, Michigan, so a suburb just outside of Detroit. So I've been in the construction industry for 11 years now, and actually, interestingly enough, I moved from Michigan to California, worked out there for a couple of years, and had some opportunity to work on some projects like a federal courthouse, and worked on Coronado Island on some Navy jobs, and then moved back to Michigan and got a change of scenery and worked on some power plants, which was a really unique experience to have. So a couple other fun facts. So I love skiing, like Steve. We were just chatting about. Had some flurries in Michigan, and I think he's got about a foot of snow out there in Denver. But I have 2 boys, 7 and 3. So like everybody, working from home, hopefully they've been given the heads up to hopefully be quiet for the next hour. But if you hear any loud bangs or screaming, I promise it's not me, it's one of my kids. So
yeah, we were going to keep an eye on the door behind you and see if anybody came through during the session.
Yeah. All right, so a little bit about Barton Malow. So Barton Malow is 96 years old. We have 15 offices across 10 states, a little around 2,000 employees. And one of the cool things on this slide here is the world-class safety record. So Barton Malow works in many different markets. You can kind of categorize those into institutional and industrial, so sports and entertainment, healthcare, education, automotive, energy, and industrial.
Great. So now let's recap a little bit of this journey that I've been talking about here. There's the journey with SmartVid, and then we'll talk about the journey with Autodesk, and talk to you, Ted, about some of the decisions along the way, and to continue working with the technologies and how it's impacting project risk. So, we've been working together since 2019. Just expanded to division-wide this year, which we're really psyched about. The core of this is safety monitoring, which we're going to talk about in a second, where our AI, Vinny, is using 2D photos that are coming from Box, as well as 360 photos from construction site. And now we're adding BIM 360 imagery. We're launching the safety observations module in addition to the safety monitoring. And you guys are a member of the Predictive Analytics Strategic Council, which is what I mentioned before, this group of companies getting together. It's now up to 18 companies actually sharing data and thinking about how to change the world through predictions. I'm wondering, Ted, if you could talk a little bit about the journey and the why, what's been keeping you moving here as we go from where we started to now the expansion across different products and across the whole division.
Yeah, no, happy to jump in here. So, part of the journey has been, initially on the monitoring. We'll get into a lot more of that later, but monitoring and then kind of second phase is into the observations. But really the goal is to broaden the rollout to focus on incident rate reduction and being able to empower the safety management team with more information at their fingertips to be able to better see what's going on their job sites from a photo level, as well as other insights to better drive good decisions.
Awesome. Now on the Autodesk side, Steve, you guys have been on a journey as well with Barton Malow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this journey has gone on and on for the last couple of years. I mean, as Barton Malow has been a longtime customer of Assemble, PlanGrid, and Building Connected, it only made sense to continue the relationship as it all became one Autodesk family. Over the last 18, 24 months, we were able to work together and look at current workflows and how to amplify them. And now Barton Malow is moving to a company-wide BIM 360 as their core construction management system. And we're still constantly looking at their entire process, from the viewing documents, analysis of data, to our IQ, and working with our development teams to build a better solution for Barton Malow to continue on in the future.
That's great. And Ted, the decision was made pretty recently around moving with Autodesk to broaden the adoption there?
Yeah, we've been collaborating with Autodesk for a while, but within the last 6 months or so, we've really hastened our approach, to BIM 360. So for a long time now, we've been leveraging Assemble, in the pre-com realm for 3D QTO, and recently, about a year ago, moved over to Building Connected. So BIM 360 has been the latest kind of addition to the family.
Awesome, great. All right, well, let's get into some of the details here. So let's talk about SmartVid, and that'll be the primary focus here. Thanks, Steve, for being a part of the webinar and the support. We're going to spend a lot of time on SmartVid, and then we'll also be bringing in Autodesk as we go. And if folks are interested in Autodesk, there'll be an opportunity at the end also to sign up for more information. But we're going to talk about the SmartVid deployment here, which has 3 phases. The first phase here in lime green, which is what we've been starting with, and what we're going to talk about first, is the safety monitoring module on top of enterprise photo and video management. We're going to talk about safety observations and predictive analytics next, as the next parts of the overall deployment. So safety monitoring, what the heck is it? How does it work? And how's it adding value for Barton Malow today? I'm going to take the next couple of slides and just describe it real quick, and then Ted's going to come in and we'll talk about how it's actually working. So what is safety monitoring? Well, it's a way for our AI, Vinny, to take data from the project, whether it's photo data or video data or other project data, analyze it, and then create reports. It's pretty simple. It's just like on your phone. A lot of people don't know this, but if you're on your phone, you can search for even the word beer and it'll bring up photos of beer. Well, we've trained Vinny to see a whole bunch of safety, think of them as safety indicators of safety risk and of project risk in the photos that are coming through your construction management systems today. So it's actually, I'll show you some specific examples in a second of what Vinny can see, but now it's close to 60 different things. So with Barton Malow, Ted, you guys implemented it with a whole bunch of different photo sources, right? Autodesk, Oxblue, Box.
Yeah, yep. And so yeah, we first started off with Box. That's been our longtime place to store files and photos and all that stuff. And one of the benefits to SmartVid is there's an integration between Box and SmartVid. And so, it's all of these are actually very easy integrations to turn on. You just essentially log into SmartVid and tell it which app, and then point it to what folder. So linking Box folders to our SmartVid projects is very simple. We started with that, and then we moved into some of the additional apps you see on there, like Struction Site. So for job site walks and progress and stuff like that, you can easily walk your job site, take standard photos, 360 photos, and get those synced over to SmartVid for processing. And then, I'm sure everybody has, fixed cameras, so like an Oxblue camera or EarthCam camera. So we're able to link those in as additional sources of photos and information. And then, finally, part of this, we've been rolling out BIM 360. So again, the integration exists. Any photos that you store within BIM 360 or that end up in BIM 360, again, you can set that integration. It's going to send everything from BIM 360 into SmartVid So you don't have to, migrate any data over whatsoever. The integration does it for you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, having been in the construction industry with technology myself now for 15 years, we're in such a different spot now than we were, even 5 years ago in terms of the ability of different systems to exchange data. These integrations are really, it's really great. The underlying technology, you can set them up and then the information starts flowing. It doesn't have to be a custom project. It just flows and moves. And Autodesk has done a lot on the API side as well. Steve, to make it easy for data to move back and forth. Do you want to just say a word on that before we move on?
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing. BIM 360 being built on the Forge platform with the open API allows that information to pass freely between the different solutions and really makes BIM 360 that common data environment.
Yeah, so I think you remember, I think all three of us remember back when integrating two systems was like you had to call consultants and do all this stuff. Now, literally, you just have to, it's as easy as, integrating your Facebook and your Instagram or whatever, it's just, you just type in your username and password. And I think I just made myself sound really old.
You just, yes.
All right, let's keep it moving so I don't embarrass myself too much. All right, so let's get into more specifics here. So what the heck is this Vinny thing doing? So Vinny is looking at photos. These are all examples from Barton Malow. Thanks, Ted, for letting us use these. These are photos coming from the site, and then this is in SmartVid. This is our actual application, our screens. You can see what Vinny's seeing on the left. Simple example here is no gloves. Identifying a worker with no gloves here. Here's another example, a little bit more recent from the site, where basically we've continuing to add new things that Vinny can see, truck, phases of work. Here's trench work, folding ladders, as we'll see in a second. Vinny's not just detecting things, he's counting things. So number of ladders that are seen on site and then whether or not they're being used safely. Here, this guy's not wearing gloves up on the lift there. Here's an example of a ladder, folding ladder that's seen, some of the other things that are being seen and where it comes from. You can actually also tell where the data is coming from. It's coming from box here, seeing some of the ladder positioning. And it doesn't end there. It's not, Vinny's not just looking at that stuff. We're actually continuing to roll out new categories. So guardrail issues, I won't read them all, ladder safety, working around mobile equipment or mobile equipment issues, hole covers, stairway health, and all of this is geared towards helping you identify indicators of risk. Not because you want to nail anybody, but because it's data that helps you trend and provide basically focus to the safety management team like Ted was talking about. Let's move to COVID, because that, we've all been on this journey, like I said, over the last couple of years, and now we've run into this wall of COVID-19, and you can't talk about safety, you can't talk about job site risk without talking about COVID. So we wanted to bring in some COVID resources here and make them available to folks. So if you're in the chat, you should see, you'll see some links. The links to the right will appear in the chat that you can use. I'm going to share a little bit about what we're seeing, and then Steve, a little bit what they're seeing, and then Ted, what he's seeing in terms of COVID-19 responsiveness. And then I'm going to talk about how the softwares that we're talking about apply to COVID-19 today. So first of all, appreciation to everybody out there. We're all in this to help everybody keep jobs open and cranes moving, but be safe. So at the end of the day, how can you mitigate this risk? What we're hearing from our customers is a whole bunch of stuff, from the obvious stuff like temperature screening, but then also on-off days, maintaining clear social distancing guidelines, minimizing tool and ride sharing. These are all things that are being recommended. And actually, there's, back to those links I mentioned, if you guys go, if on this webinar or later, you go to agc.org, the coronavirus page, it's really good. They've even got a sample COVID-19 mitigation plan in Word that you can use. It's got a whole bunch of really practical suggestions. There's other resources out there too. Steve, Autodesk has created a blog that's got info on COVID-19 as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You'll find a lot of great information there, as well as information on our BIM 360 platform, our document management. We've actually extended trials for anybody who wants to get into it. It is a way that you can actually better deal with the situation that we have today, as opposed to being stuck with no tools that are available or having to buy a set of tools. The last thing that anybody wants to do is spend more money to be able to deal with what we're dealing with right now. And that link for the COVID-19 construction is constantly being updated almost on a daily basis from Autodesk's side.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, thanks for saying that. We also are giving the COVID-19 features for social distancing, which I'm going to show examples of in a second, where those are also free to the industry, so that people can use them to start to help reinforce social distancing on top of the images that they're gathering today. So, those are some of the things that we're seeing and doing and resources. Ted, from your perspective, what's Barton Malow doing? What can you share about your mitigation measures?
Yeah, so I think some of the more interesting things, were, again, sure everyone's kind of experienced this from some perspective of theirs, which is, working from home. But, early in March, right, things were changing fairly frequently. And one of the biggest things that we were able to leverage was, taking advantage of things like Microsoft Teams and Zoom, and being able to really scale up our training on that, to be able to offer as much training as possible to get everybody in the company comfortable with Microsoft Teams, to be able to virtualize all the meetings that they might be running from a job site, but now virtually. And then a couple other things that are unique to that would be even electronic bidding. So there's a couple of groups within Barton Malow that have really rethought maybe some of the bidding process using building connectives, as well as virtual meetings, to be able to do electronic bidding, which is pretty cool. Other tools like Struction Site, to be able to document job sites. A couple of things here would be being able to document your job site, to be able to add elements of social distancing. So people are able to work from home, they can still access the job site through Struction Site. The other thing is, unfortunately, there may be scenarios where job sites are shut down and stuff like that. So being able to document that, document those job sites, if they're shut down, and then when they're started up again. And then finally, developing simple tools for surveys and questionnaires and stuff like that. Not only that, but even site orientation, being able to virtualize site orientation. Again, underlying theme there is like social distancing, right? Being able to not have everybody congregate in one area, but be able to virtualize, site orientations so that people can do them spread out, as well as being able to deploy simple surveys and questionnaires to make sure that job sites are being cleaned and maintained, and everyone's helping.
Yeah, this whole concept of how do you help monitor and provide feedback to sites without actually being there. This remote monitoring concept is something that Ted, when you and I were talking, I think it was a month ago, we started talking about social distancing, and you said, well, hey, could Vinny help with social distancing? Could we help do a tag that shows if people are working in a group? It was some other folks that we were talking to, some other customers, and we started working on that to try and provide data from the imagery you guys are already collecting. You mentioned Struction Site, 360 photos, all that stuff can be additional information to help guide and reinforce the right kinds of behaviors. So we actually at SmartVid came out with a new Vinny tag called People in Group, which I'm showing now on the screen, which it fires off and tags images if people are overlapping or are a person length apart, or if there are more than 10 people in the image. So this is a stock photo. Actually, thank you to Engineering News Record for some of the stock photos here. And then here's some examples right from Barton Malow from, I believe, is this a site camera, Ted, that's looking down there?
Yeah.
This might be a drone. Is this a site camera image? I think so. So firing off here, showing people in group as well as some of the other stuff. And here's an example of two folks who might be a little too close to each other. And how do you guys see yourself using this kind of imagery, Ted?
So I think one of the biggest things is, the way that we did work, a month ago, right, is going to be completely different than how we do work, in a month. And or currently, right? And so I think one of the biggest benefits that this is going to provide is that it's going to give you an insight into what's going on in your job site, and what practices may need to be reevaluated. I think from the perspective of COVID right now, it's easy to think through, okay, like, so orientation, gates, cleaning, like there's natural areas where people are going to maybe congregate that you can target and maybe use social distancing tactics and those sorts of things to spread things out. But where it may be challenging is if you have natural choke points or choke points with people flow on a job site due to equipment or staging or those sorts of things. This is going to be able to give you an idea into how people are working and be able to spread people out over time.
Yeah, totally. I think it's really important to reinforce for folks too that you're not seeing this as like this isn't a gotcha tool. You're not using this to nail people or anything. This is really to help reinforce and focus attention and generate data. And we're going to get into the data itself in a second. But I just want to make that point because I know it's one that you believe in strongly, right, Ted?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the key thing here is that you're trying to move the needle from either a culture standpoint or understanding standpoint of what's going on your job site. Definitely not like a gotcha or big brother. This is trying to understand what controls you're putting in place on your job site, what's working well, what's not working well, and kind of macro moves, not micromanaging. So
yeah. The other it's really important to stress that because particularly in our industry, I think a lot of times people's first instinct is to pick up the phone and yell at people or scream, but this is really about driving the right culture and setting the right behavior. And I think the other thing people would say is that, hey, do I need cameras everywhere? But right now, you're not getting any data. So the expression I like to use is like, hey, if you want to see what's going on, it's better to have some light than none at all. And just using the imagery that you're capturing already, whether it's from site cameras like this or from photos coming through BIM 360, it's going to give you some light on what's going on. And then the question is, what do you do with it? So I'm going to run real quick through how is this information used, whether it's people in group tag or any of the other tags that Vinny sees. So real quick, you can generate automatic reports every day. So the people in group examples can go automatically and get emailed every day and be used for training like Ted was just talking about. You can actually look at it in real time if you want. So here's the SmartVid interface. It's looking for any imagery that's coming through tagged as people in group, and that's on the web. So you can just go on a browser on your desktop or where your iPad or whatever. We also have a mobile app, a SmartVid mobile app. So people in group, you can actually be keep an eye on in real time as things are coming through. And see what's going on with people in group. And then last but not least, so there's automatic reports, there's the web interface, and then last but not least, we have the ability to create observations. Right in Autodesk Construction Cloud, you can create a safety observation in BIM 360. We also have our own observations tool in SmartVid that's designed to be AI friendly, and you can create safety observations right from what Vinny is seeing. And actually, coming soon is the ability to automatically create safety observations from these kinds of tags. So if there's lack of social distancing being observed, or again, another coming soon feature, if they're workers without masks, those can automatically create safety observations and then be followed up on, so that you don't have to worry about stuff falling through the cracks. It's there and it's logged. So let's keep moving here and let's get to what the value is in terms of the overall focus and management here for the safety team. Ted, do you want to talk a little bit about the insights and safety trends that we're generating in these dashboards for you that you look at?
Yeah, and so I think one of the coolest things is looking back on the last year, like a lot of this stuff started as kind of like an Excel dashboard, and really over the last years grown into what we're looking at here is a Power BI report, and moved from photo counts and those sort of things really now into data, more of the heavier data analytics and trend analysis. And what's cool about this is because now it's shareable through Power BI, is we can pin this back to the BIM 360 homepage. We can share this out with other people within an organization that needs to see this information, and it really provides a good wealth of information, and being reported on a monthly basis.
Yeah, you've been on this journey with us as we moved from having data that you could push out through our product into Excel to now we have these custom dashboards that we can tailor. Actually, custom is a strong word. These are the dashboards, standard dashboards, but you can tailor them to highlight specific aspects of the data, because I think that's a key part here. People focus on, well, what does Vinny see in a picture? Well, it's not just that you're seeing something in a picture, it's that all of those are, these are like indicators, they're observations of what's going on the job, and you can automatically collect all the observations and do stuff like this. Like, let's take this little panel right here. If we zoom in on this panel, these are the collection of all the projects in the division, and this is, by the way, thanks, but we've anonymized all the projects. If we zoom in here, this is a view of all the projects in the dashboard, and they're sorted by a risk score, which is a total of what Vinny is seeing across different categories of safety risk. So how much work at height is going on, what's the ratio of ladders to lifts and other ways of working at height, slip, trip, and fall hazards, and things like PPE compliance. And this score, Ted, I think you guys have just sort of a standard weighting where you weight each of these equally in figuring out which project to focus on, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this comes from some of the work we did with SmartVid on some of the historical data to be able to benchmark projects. And you can see there that there's the project score, which is helpful to see from a trend analysis, month over month. But then you can also see photos per month, so you can see kind of what how many photos are being taken on a job site per month. And that's obviously a key driver, a part of the metrics, because you want good information coming in to be able to be analyzed, and then all those other categories there give you insights into what's driving that project score metric.
Yeah, the whole concept of benchmarking has been really important as we've worked with you guys and other customers. So here's an example of the benchmarking area where you're actually benchmarking projects against each other. So you can see, for this particular month, where projects stand in terms of this quote unquote risk score. It's important to mention, though, that the risk score doesn't mean that anyone's doing anything wrong. It's just a relative measure of how many risky activities are being seen on site by Vinny. Work at height is inherently risky. If there are slip, trip, and fall hazards, that's inherently risky. Again, it's a way of helping to focus a team's attention to be able to help drive towards lower incident rates by focusing on those jobs. So I'm going to switch over actually to if everything let me see here, cooperates here. I'm going to switch over. Ted, do you see the dashboard here full screen?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. It's funny, for folks who are listening in, you should know that the GoToWebinar interface had a whole bunch of bugs right before we logged in. So in some ways, we're flying a little blind here. So sorry if it seems a little fumbly, but we're now looking at this anonymized Barton Malow dashboard, and some pretty cool stuff in here that I wanted to poke around on. So first of all, these are the project scores that we were just showing before. If you take a look at this project here, Project J, and we click on it, what you're going to now see is the dashboard refresh. It's actually going to show you where it is. And then this is a new feature we just rolled out in the last month or so, which is Vinny is actually able to see in the imagery which construction activity is going on. So you can kind of put in context the various things that are going on for this job and other jobs over time. But let's drill in real quick here, and let's say, all right, Project J, it's being seen as pretty risky. There's a bunch of work at height going on. Relative to other projects, there's a fair number of slip and trip hazards that are being seen, and the ladder's last ratio is actually pretty high relative to the others. Let's drill in and take a look at those. So if I now go into, for example, the work at height metrics, I can click into that tab in the dashboard. It's going to refresh the data, and I'm going to be able to get a view to trends over time. This is where this concept of benchmarking gets really interesting, because let's just take here work at height overall. This is for the company average overall, how much work at height, and then this orange line is actually to a SmartVid peer group. So for various projects, you can kind of get a feel for whether or not, on average, there's more or less work at height going on. Another, I think, really interesting set of data is what kinds of ladders are being used. So if Vinny is seeing site ladders on your jobs, you can actually pick those out and focus in on those. If we go to Project J, for example, I'll click on that. It's going to refresh, and you're going to see that Project J's work at height is has actually been spiking up recently, as well as its use of folding ladders, which kind of makes sense because if you look, there's a ton of MEP work going on. So there must be a bunch of stuff going on above, overhead. The other area that was interesting or that stuck out was slip and trip. So if you look at, again, this gives you some of the slip and trip for the company versus the industry peer group. If I click back into Project J, it's going to show you again, yep, oh, here's a spike recently, and now it's because it looks like there's been some standing water seen on the site. This is housekeeping as well. So this allows you to then direct attention towards those potential risk areas and focus attention there. Last but not least, I can't help but show off the construction activities data, so you can actually get a feel across your jobs what construction activities are going on, and then see how that works over time. As I mentioned, we just rolled this feature out, so there's only a couple of months of data here, but you get to see what is going on in your jobs. And I know from other examples working with some of our other customers, it's been really useful in seeing, for example, where, let's say, maybe demo has started in a project a bit earlier than you thought, and then you're able to deploy safety resources or look at those jobs through that lens of risk and be able to handle those risks, even if it's ahead of when you thought those particular risks might be presenting themselves. So that's the live dashboard, and you guys are using these to help elevate risk and focus attention. Is that right, Ted?
Yeah. I mean, the whole goal. Yeah, the whole goal of the dashboard is really to provide, lens into, like, one, to cut through the information that you're getting. So, for example, you've got thousands of photos on your job site just on a normal, basis. Like, being able to tap into that information and be able to gain insights from it, is very, very, very helpful. We're going to jump into observations here, which is going to add a whole nother element to the information they're going to be able to glean from the job site. So
cool. Yeah. So where does it go from here? See, we got observations and predictive, right?
Yeah. Yep. So we kind of covered. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so on the observations front, one of the things we've talked about recently is that the desire to complement the automatic stuff that Vinny sees in the AI with an observations process that is what people see in the field. And strangely, like with COVID happening, now is actually a good time to look at that process because you actually have some time to consider it, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And some of the stuff that we're doing, right now is, partnering with SmartVid, looking at APIs and enhancing some of these dashboards. We're also, looking at our software tools, starting to partner, with software companies to really make sure that we have meaningful tools that are deploying to the field. One of those things in particular is the observation tool, and making sure that we have a good pilot and good deployment strategy to be able to leverage that on job sites. And another cool thing is we're actually working on our BIM 360 safety checklist. So really focusing on modernizing and updating our checklist and being able to leverage the power of BIM 360 behind that as well.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool to see how both products being used next to each other, where Steve there, as you know, working with Ted, they're bringing their checklists into BIM 360 as a part of that deployment. So the predictive analytics piece is where it all goes, bringing in data from the safety monitoring analytics, the image analytics, safety observation data, and then also incident data, with the goal of ultimately predicting what's going to happen in the coming week so that you can focus on where things are going instead of where they've come from. This is a really important theme for Autodesk and an important theme for us too. that you can use AI to be able to understand where the world is going, as is being done in many industries. And Ted, just a last thought on that from you. That's a key concept. How important is that as a concept for you guys?
Well, it's huge. I mean, you know, thinking about Vinny and thinking about construction IQ and stuff like that. I mean, the data's always been there, right? And so now these tools are able to, you know, look at the data and develop meaningful insights, you know, for you to be able to make better decisions, which is, you know, absolutely the direction that the industry should be heading in and is heading into, you know, with the tools that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a great transition to what Autodesk has been doing and around this concept of data and cards. Steve, do you want to talk briefly about the partner cards and the Project IQ stuff, the insights?
Exactly. So, you know, in BIM 360, we have a Project Home, which is a live dashboard that's taking all the information that you're building, issues, checklists, RFIs, submittals, whatever you're building, whatever the construction information that you're generating is being consumed and provided in a visually graphical way that it's very easy to see your trends. And what we've been able to do is actually add in our partners. So SmartFit, for instance, to bring their dashboards, to bring their photos into your Project Home, so you have a one-stop shop. You start at BIM 360, you go into SmartFit, and you can see the photos and you can see the issues that are being created. And then you go to the next component, the next workflow, the next capability that you need, as opposed to, and Ted touched upon this before, all this technology wasn't actually generating anything for us. It was just as if we were doing paper checklists and writing stuff down in a field book. We don't have the time to analyze this information. That's what this project, this Construction IQ, that's what Vinny, that's what any of these AI engines need to be doing now and improving for us in the future.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to bring this all together, and we can go into the Q&A here as we come up on about 10 minutes left. If you think about, you know, the journeys that all three of us have been on, and you know, in our careers, over the last 10, 15 years, there's more and more digital information in construction, and the question is, how can you use it to make better decisions? How can you use it to predict risk? And that's what the journey of Barton Malow, I feel like, Ted, is a similar journey. Like, you guys are gathering and standardizing on certain platforms so that you can really focus attention on risk. And in this case, we're talking about safety risk and COVID risk, but that's the theme of the industry overall. Now that there's more digital data, how do you use it? So with that little summary here, we got some great questions that have come in from chat. Let me start off here with I'm just going to pick off a few. First of all, someone, Ted, you have a fan out there. Someone says, "Go Ted." So good job. I guess they used to work at Barton Malow. No props for you yet, Steve. Sorry.
That's okay.
So question for you, Ted, on BIM 360. BIM 360 imagery and the various image sources. Can you just recap really quickly, you know, what the image sources are that are going into Vinny, and you know, how much of those you already had and how many of them are new?
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, I think from kind of high level. So when you set up a SmartVid job and a BIM 360 job, you're able to go into SmartVid, you know, turn on the integration for that project, and it really is just kind of flipping like a toggle switch. And what that does is then that basically sets up, you know, a refresh routine, you know, that anytime you put a photo, you know, a document that looks like a photo inside of BIM 360, it gets viewed, you know, and sent to SmartVid. And so, you know, that way, like if you're using an integration in BIM 360, let's say that, you know, like the EarthCam or, you know, Multi-Vista app or something like that, you know, integration, anything that's going to be pushed into BIM 360 is also going to be consumed by Vinny. So, and then the other integrations, you know, Instruction Site is another good example of this. When you turn on Instruction Site and take your, you know, progress walks, job site walks, those sorts of things, it's going to send those photos to SmartVid as well to be able to be processed. So hopefully that kind of adds some color to the question.
No, that's great. That's great. As you were talking, some folks out there felt sorry for Steve, so you got 2 shout outs, Steve. Nice job. Going to the next question. Ted, do you worry about how much data you have? You know, what do you do with all this stuff at the end of the project? Do you archive it? Do you, where does that enter in?
That's a good question. I mean, there's, I think that the interesting thing is like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, right? Like the amount of data, it might have gone up, a little bit, but like, now there's more data being generated on a job site than ever. For example, EarthCam, right? EarthCam is going to be generating, hundreds of thousands of photos. You've got more files than you ever had before. And I think that's like, there's nothing you can, I mean, it's just a fact of life, now, right? There's just going to be more data regardless. And I think, that's where looking at good tools, good smart tools that kind of help cut through that and be able to help you navigate that information is what, what the new normal is going to be. So.
Yep. Yeah. I think this is where, over the last 15 years, seeing the cloud really, come up and be used too. The cost of storage has gone through the floor. I think you get, as a part of your subscriptions to Autodesk or to SmartVid, the storage is pretty much in there. So
yeah, our storage is unlimited, and just talking about the amount of information that is created from a single project and multiply that across 20, 30 projects a company might do in a course of a year. 8 years ago, a 16 gigabyte flash drive was $32. Now a 128 gigabyte flash drive is $32. So we can retain a lot more of our information now than we could before.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen those photos of people loading 500 megabytes of storage into a plane from like those photos from like I think it's from the 1970s, like some of the original computers, and it's as big as a small truck for 500, I think, kilobytes of storage or something like that. It's pretty amazing. All right, let's get back to some of the meatier questions here. So this one is super important: privacy and unions and dealing with that. With images, with other project data. How do we address privacy issues and have those conversations? I'm going to start, and Ted and Steve, I'll turn it to you guys. So, we at SmartVid, we take privacy really seriously. We've actually certified to the European privacy standards. We never try and identify people or faces. And we also have guidelines that we provide to our customers that put in practice exactly what Ted and I were talking about before, that SmartVid shall not be used as a punitive tool for any individual workers, and is only used to help guide overall behavior through data and trends. And that's really helped in terms of having that in writing, and having policies around that has really helped in terms of those conversations. Ted, how have you found it?
I mean, similar. It's one of those things that is becoming more prevalent, and so then there's should be sensitivity to that, and should be careful and respectful on how we handle that data. Being good data stewards. What I think is interesting is, like you said, Josh, looking at like the European Union and GDPR and stuff like that, and those policies and the decisions that those are, how those are made, adding information, color, and influence into how we view our own data. I see it just constantly evolving for probably the next 5 to 10 years. You think of all the Facebook, news articles and stuff like that around your privacy and data and stuff like that, and it's good because it's getting everybody thinking about that, and having that conversation around how we take care of cybersecurity and data protection.
Yeah.
And And from the Autodesk side, we also, I mean, as a publicly traded company, all of our stuff is out there for you to be able to see, as far as our cloud security and our trust center. So you could just Google Autodesk Cloud Security, and it'll bring you right to some white papers that will illustrate on how we also apply and align to the GDPR, the European, the EU. I forget what their acronym stands for. And even though it's not implemented here in the US, it is something that is really important to us to make sure that we keep our customers' information and their data sovereignty in their hands, and that we protect the rights of our customers.
Great. Yeah, it's an important issue. I mean, with as we've all mentioned, there's more and more data every day. You know, how you manage that data is really critical, and trust as a core part of that is also critical. We want the data to be used positively. It actually, and this is where, having been doing construction technology for a while now, it's really interesting. I think back 10 years ago, there were similar questions about quality data. Is it bad, for example, customers would ask, hey, can we have quality, is it bad to have quality data around punch listing even in a centralized place? But what's been shown is that the companies that adopt and use data to help track and improve their processes, they wind up being better performing companies overall. And the risk is, the benefit far outweighs any risk there. I don't know, Ted or Steve, if you have any thoughts on that too from your experience.
Being with the Autodesk for almost a better part of a decade, I agree that there has been in the past a apprehension of too much data or where they put it. And I think now, as we all live in the cloud, it's actually becoming more part of our daily lives. And it's incredibly exciting for me to be able to work throughout North America and collaborating with my worldwide colleagues on how the cloud processes are becoming more and more ingrained into the construction industry, which is only going to improve it, of which it desperately needs.
Yeah, and Ted, you've been a part of that transition to more and more data over time. And this is a great opportunity to say thank you, Ted. Thanks to Barton Malow for partnering with us on this journey. We're up against the hour here. I want to reiterate that SmartVid, we're offering 60 days free for Vinny, and adding Vinny to your team to help with COVID-19. Just email us or visit SmartVid.io. If you're on this webinar, you'll get a follow-up email along with the referral, with the not with the referral, with the recording. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not a marketing person, and neither is Steve or Ted. So sorry for the stumbles, but if you're interested in Autodesk Construction Cloud, speaking of marketing, when the webinar ends or when you exit the webinar, you'll be asked if you'd like them to follow up with you. Just click yes, and you'll get a personal message from Steve in your inbox. No, just kidding on that one. But you will get information followed up from Autodesk. And again, big thanks, Ted, for the journey we've been on. This webinar is really just a footnote to the much bigger story of how we've worked together to leverage the data that you're gathering and continue to gather to help drive safer job sites, both before and now in this era of COVID-19. So thanks, Ted, and thanks, Steve, for participating, and thanks for your partnership on this journey, guys.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Steve.
Take care, everybody.